So I got another interesting observation. When I'm looking at the spectrum, there is a natural hump here from all of the local EMI all over the place, and that's right around 500 K hertz. When I turn on my Tesla coil, you can see that I get a big old additive hump from all that extra energy right there. And it'll start going down once I put in too much energy and the harmonics start changing. But it still comes right back as I crank up the energy all the way. So the interesting observation is the interaction between the ultrasound and these Tesla spikes. So I turn on my ultrasound, there you can hear it, and you can see all my spikes here on the side. As I crank up the ultrasound, you can watch how that interacts as I crank it way up. All right, so that's up to 100K hertz. You don't really need to go much higher than that. So when I turn on my Tesla coil, I'll just go through a crank for you guys. You can see how it interacts. So when I turn on my Tesla coil, there is a trough right there in between the two where I'll turn off the Tesla coil. So you can see these spikes coming down off of the ultrasound, and I'll turn that off. And then the spikes coming off of the Tesla coil, they meet right there in the middle, right around, what's that? That's about 250K. So I'll turn it on, get that all the way on, then turn on my ultrasound, and you can see how we get all sorts of interesting interactions. I'm way too high. Oh, it's 210K. Let's go back down here to 30K. 30K. But you can see my entire noise floor is now raised from the additive resonances between the ultrasound and the Tesla coil. I turn off the Tesla coil. Well, I guess not so additive. Okay, ignore that side. The important part is right here at that trough in the middle that I'm going to zoom in on. All right, so right here off the side, that is the 500K hump in the middle. And now as I show you back and forth, crank up my ultrasound a little more, you can see those spikes coming over. There's 10K, 20K, 30K. Let's keep it around 10 so you can see more spikes. As I crank this up, there's this natural dip. I wonder if maybe that is related at all to the corkscrewing that Jeremiah was talking about, where we have the Tesla coil is producing like the grooves and the ultrasound is producing the twisting, or vice versa. I don't know. I'll turn on my high voltage so you can just watch what happens to the whole thing with high voltage on. Note that I don't have the rotors going at the moment. I'll turn those on in a moment, if I can. So right now I'm at about, let's see how high we get up to. We're at around 10K volts off of my high voltage. I will say, I notice an audible change in the ultrasound when I vary the high voltage. There's one spot in the high voltage where it starts to diminish the amplitude, at least audibly, of the ultrasound. Nope, scratch that. It's because high frequency is very directional. As I move my head around, I'm hearing a different sound. Like moving my head back and forth even a quarter of an inch is enough to have the amplitude in my ear. So now we're at 13K. Turn that down. Turn that up. Sure does seem like when I turn up my high voltage to a certain amount, it really evens out the noise in between the amplitudes of my Tesla frequencies. Turn out the Tesla coil, move around my ultrasound. You can see though, at 10 kHz, my ultrasound noise is surrounding those spikes from the high voltage. And now at 20K, they're in between. 30K, they're back on. I turn back up my Tesla. You can see what happens to that noise in between all the spikes. And that's really cranking. That's 45 watt. I don't want to keep it that hot. That's off. Anyways. Oh, I said I was going to turn on the rotors. See if I can do that without knocking my phone over. Well, that sure seems like those jumps are, these, bounces that we're getting are potentially related to the spinning of the rotors. Speed it up. I know from experience that at 14.2 volts input, that gets me right at 2500 RPM on the bottom. There we go, 14.2, 2500 on the bottom and 3000 on the top. Not hearing any peculiar sounds. Faster. pulse my ultrasound like he said. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. My high voltage is still somewhere around 12 to 13K. No, 15K. Dialing in my ultrasound to the same frequency as my flybacks. Really smelling some ozone. Turn my high voltage down and back up. Alright, I'm at 20K on the high voltage. Ooh, that transistor's getting toasty. Yeah. I don't know why it's not working. But that trough is interesting.